The applause still echoed against the glass walls when I stepped forward, certificate in hand. 15 years of building markets, rescuing contracts no one else could salvage, and carrying this company through storms had finally been recognized. Senior Development Manager. My name was on the announcement. My colleagues rose to clap, and for a fleeting moment I let myself believe that merit had triumphed. Then the glass doors opened. Selena Draven walked in like she owned the air in the room, her designer heels striking the polished floor with the authority of a gavel. She didn't bother to smile at the clapping colleagues or at me. Frozen mid-breath at the podium, she simply lifted a note card she never glanced at and said, "There's been a change." The clapping faltered into silence. Her gaze skimmed me the way someone might study an insect they were about to brush aside. After reconsideration, Marcella Orvain will serve as assistant coordinator. Consider it a reality check. The certificate in my hand seemed to gain weight until it burned against my palms. I heard the low murmur of shock ripple across the boardroom, but no one moved. Not even Victor Draven, the CEO and her father, because he wasn't here. Celine had staged this alone. HR Director Jonas Corrine adjusted his tie, lips twitching in what passed for a smirk. "Organizational needs shift quickly," he said, as though that excused the ambush. I felt the heat rise to my face, but I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. My closest colleague, Isolde Moran, half reached for my arm, then hesitated, fear tightening her features. The others lowered their eyes, unwilling to be caught offering sympathy. Celine continued as if nothing remarkable had happened. "Champagne and cake will be served in the break room. Unfortunately, I have a call with our European partners in 15 minutes. She checked her watch, dismissing me as if I were a clerical error, not a human being. The applause was gone, replaced by awkward shuffling. My triumph had been erased in less than a minute. Yet beneath the humiliation, something shifted inside me, a quiet, unyielding resolve. If this company wanted me invisible, then I would decide when and how I appeared again. And as I left the boardroom clutching the certificate that no longer meant anything, I could already feel the walls of the office closing in, hollow and cold, waiting to swallow me whole. I walked out of the boardroom with my certificate pressed flat against my chest, as though holding it tighter would keep it from dissolving into dust. The celebration had collapsed into whispers, the clink of champagne glasses dulled, no longer cheerful but obligatory. Celine had vanished into her father's office suite, leaving her decree hanging in the air like a bad odor. I found Jonas Corrine waiting in the hallway. His half-smile carried the smugness of someone who'd seen this scene too many times. When I asked what justification there could possibly be, he gave a little shrug. "Family always weighs more than merit here. You know that." The words cut sharper than Celine's announcement. Family over merit. He might as well have said, "You never had a chance." Isolde Moran brushed past him and gently touched my arm, her eyes full of the sympathy she dared not speak aloud. Her hand lingered for a moment before she let it fall, retreating into the crowd like everyone else. Fear kept them all silent. No one wanted to be noticed offering me comfort. The break room filled with hollow laughter and the pop of a champagne cork. I heard the faint clatter of cake being served on paper plates. No one wanted to be there, yet no one had the courage to leave first. That was how Celine's power worked, empty rituals performed to preserve appearances. I carried my things down to my new cubicle, tucked in a corner near the emergency exit. The window looked out not at the skyline but at a brick wall, its red surface baking under the sun. The downgrade wasn't just a practical move, it was a message. This wasn't an isolated insult. It was the beginning of a purge, a warning that loyalty and results meant nothing against bloodlines and connections. I sat in my chair, the fabric scratchy against my skin, and stared at the blank wall. My old projects, my victories, my future in this company, they had all been erased with a sentence. And yet, somewhere beneath the humiliation, a quiet question stirred inside me about what weapons remained to someone stripped of everything but resolve. The brick wall outside my new cubicle blurred as memories rose unbidden, carrying me far from Manhattan's glass towers to the humid air of a Louisiana port city. I had grown up in a house that smelled of salt water and engine oil, where the constant groan of ships docking was the backdrop to my childhood. Opportunity was a distant rumor, but responsibility was immediate. When my younger sister received an acceptance letter to a state university, I knew what I had to do. I turned down my own scholarship, folded it away like a letter never sent, and picked up 2 night shifts at the harbor. By day, I stocked shelves at a hardware store. By night, I counted crates under floodlights. And on weekends, I tutored high school kids in algebra. Every dollar I made went toward her tuition. Diligence, precision, loyalty. Those were the values drilled into me not by professors, but by necessity. Years later, New York promised a different life. I joined Draven Global, eager to prove myself where results were supposed to matter. My first assignment was Australia, where I discovered our products were spoiling in unregulated warehouses. A few emails and inspections later, I saved the company millions in wasted inventory. Canada came next. Tariffs threatened to choke our margins, but I found a legal workaround buried in the fine print. In Japan, when our marketing blundered by ignoring cultural etiquette, I rebuilt relationships with the quiet patience others dismissed as weakness. Each victory, I handed over without fanfare. The credit went to men who played golf with Victor Draven, or to women who wore the right last name. I told myself it didn't matter. That merit eventually rose like cream. I stayed late. I worked weekends. I filled the gaps left by others. And now, after years of sacrifices no one saw, after a lifetime of giving more than I kept for myself, Celine Draven had swept it all aside with a single line about a reality check. I pressed my palms flat against the desk, the sting of injustice settling deeper into my chest as the memory of my sacrifices met the reality of my demotion. The following morning, I arrived early, hoping the quiet would steady me. Instead, my inbox greeted me with a dagger. At the very top sat a company-wide announcement from Celine Draven, effective immediately. I will personally lead the European Market Expansion Initiative. The subject line might as well have read, "Your work is now mine." My cursor hovered over the email as the blood drained from my face. That plan was my masterpiece, months of research, countless calls across time zones, late nights studying obscure regulations. I had built a roadmap worth $40 million in first-year revenue, and Celine had claimed it in a single sentence. A notification pinged. It was from Isolde. She had forwarded Celine's message with 3 words typed in bold, "She's taking credit." I closed my eyes, letting the anger rise and fall like a tide I couldn't stop. Before I could reply, my phone rang. The name flashing across the screen made my breath catch. Eric Langenfeld, CEO of our largest potential European partner. I forced my voice steady as I answered. "Marcella, your analysis is unmatched," he said warmly. "We'll confirm details at tomorrow's presentation. My board is eager." The knot in my stomach tightened. Tomorrow. And it wouldn't be me presenting. Not 5 minutes later. Another call came through, this time from Brussels. Daria Novikova, my quiet contact inside the European Commission, spoke quickly, her voice taut with urgency. "Marcella, listen carefully. The parliamentary vote on digital commerce has been moved up 1 week, not 6 months. If your company doesn't file immediately, you'll lose the advantage. I scribbled the new date on a notepad, the ink digging into the paper. This was the kind of intelligence that changed everything, the difference between market dominance and total collapse. And I was the only one who knew it. As I set the phone down, Selena's email still glared back at me. The company had betrayed me without hesitation. Now I had to decide, save them from themselves, or let silence become the sharpest lesson of all. The office emptied as twilight settled across the city, but I stayed at my desk, the glow of my monitor casting a thin light over stacks of folders. My private research file sat open, updated timelines, notes on the accelerated vote, the calculations no one else had. Everything that mattered rested within those pages. I hovered my mouse over the shared drive, my finger tense on the button that could upload it all. One click, and the company would be safe. One click, and Selene would stand before the Europeans tomorrow armed with the truth. But then I looked up. Through the glass wall of the adjacent conference room, I saw Selene rehearsing with my slides. She carried herself with radiant certainty, gesturing broadly to imaginary investors. Each graph she cited was already out of date, every projection flawed, and yet her confidence filled the room, hollow but loud. I sat back, arms crossed, and whispered under my breath, let her speak my words without my meaning. For years I had filled in the gaps, quietly protecting others from the weight of their ignorance, patching leaks before they sank ships. And what had it earned me? A demotion, a smirk from HR, a public theft of my work. Loyalty had never been rewarded here, only lineage and arrogance. The file remained on my screen, its blinking cursor taunting me. My hand dropped away from the mouse. If Draven Global valued names over merit, then they could live or die by that choice. My silence would not be sabotage. It would be the simple absence of rescue. I shut the laptop, slid my notes back into my bag, and rose. Selene's laughter drifted faintly through the glass as she stumbled over a technical term, brushing it off with a flick of her hand. Confidence without substance. I walked out of the office into the night air, the city buzzing around me. For the first time in years, I felt lighter, almost free, as though by saying nothing I had chosen the only truth left to me. Tomorrow, she would stand in front of them all, and the silence I carried would finally speak. The boardroom gleamed that morning, sunlight bouncing off polished glass as if determined to disguise the tension settling over every chair. Executives filled the long table, papers neatly stacked, eyes sharp with expectation. At precisely 9, Eric Langenfeld and his legal team from Brussels entered, their presence carrying the weight of millions in potential revenue. The investment committee followed, 5 stone-faced individuals whose approval meant survival. I slipped into a seat in the back row, unnoticed, the assistant coordinator with no voice. From there, I could see everything: the curve of Selene's smile, the sparkle of her couture dress, the way she relished the stage that had never belonged to her. She passed out handouts I had created, polished slides I had built, and then began. Her voice flowed with practiced confidence. Market sizes, growth projections, competitive charts, all delivered with the cadence of someone sure of her superiority. The first 10 minutes passed without challenge, nods circling the table, pens jotting notes. Then the questions began. What contingencies are in place if regulations change? One investor asked. Selene's smile flickered. The regulatory environment is stable. No major changes are expected for at least 6 months. A rustle moved through the committee. Eric leaned forward. That's incorrect. The parliamentary vote is scheduled for next week. Silence descended like a curtain. Pens stopped. eyes darted between Celine and Eric. She blinked, her confidence slipping, then recovered with brittle poise. Our intelligence indicates no such urgency. Rumors shouldn't dictate corporate decisions. Eric's jaw tightened, his legal counsel whispering furiously in his ear. The investors exchanged pointed glances, skepticism written across their faces. The questions piled up, sharper now. Technical, tariff impacts, supply chain adjustments, legal frameworks. Celine floundered, her answers vague, contradictory, a desperate dance around details she had never understood. The elegance of her dress could not cover the cracks in her knowledge. The air grew colder with every response. What had begun as applause for her entrance dissolved into the hollow scrape of pens being set aside, of chairs shifting with impatience. By the time she stammered through her closing slide, the silence in the room was no longer polite. It was judgment, heavy and unspoken, waiting for a verdict that would not favor her. By the time the meeting broke apart, the tension had already leaked into the hallways. Executives moved quickly, heads bent together, voices clipped and low. Word traveled faster than any memo by lunch. The whispers were everywhere. The deal is collapsing. I passed clusters of employees murmuring near the elevators. When they saw me, the conversations cut short, replaced by uneasy glances. I didn't need to ask. Their silence told me everything. Victor Dravain stormed down the corridor, his phone pressed to his ear, his free hand slashing the air in frustration. Behind him trailed Celine, her complexion pale against the sharp line of her suit. She avoided my gaze as if even a glance might expose her. The image of her, diminished and scrambling, might have given me satisfaction once. Now it was just confirmation of what I already knew. I returned to my new cubicle, the one facing the brick wall, and sat down. The phone on my desk buzzed almost immediately. HR, then legal, then finance. Each call rolled into the next, my voicemail filling as the red light blinked furiously. Messages stacked on my cell phone as well, buzzing across the desk like a restless insect. I let them pile up. In 4 hours, the count reached 96 missed calls, department heads, board liaisons, even Victor himself. My screen lit with his name again and again, until finally the battery began to wane. I set the device face down, lifted my coffee cup, and took a slow sip. The hum of panic around me no longer touched me. For the first time in years, I wasn't scrambling to fix someone else's mess, to prove my worth in a company that refused to see it. I simply sat, still and silent, while the building rattled with the consequences of their choices. The silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was mine to command, and as the calls multiplied into a storm, I refused to answer. I knew it was only a matter of time before they dragged me back into the fire they had started. Late afternoon, a junior assistant appeared at my cubicle, his face pale, his words clipped. "The board wants to see you. Now." He led me upstairs, past the glass doors of the executive floor I had only entered with careful permission before. The hush of the hallway was heavier than usual, as if even the air was waiting for judgment. Inside the boardroom, the table stretched long and imposing. At the head sat Adrian Volmark, silver hair perfectly arranged, his expression sharp with control. On one side was Eric Langenfeld with 2 of his legal advisors, their folders already open. Along the other sat the investment committee, hands folded, faces unreadable. I took the empty chair at the end, their eyes pinning me in place. Adrian leaned forward, his voice calm but edged. "Ms. Orvain, were you aware of next week's parliamentary vote?" My heart steadied. Yes. Gasps stirred at the table. I reached into my bag and laid down a folder. My notes, my research, the true timeline with every calculation marked in ink. Pages that had lived in my private files now sat under the board's scrutiny. Victor Draven, standing off to the side, erupted. She withheld information. This collapse is her fault. I turned to meet his glare, my voice steady. I was removed from the project. Nobody asked me for updates. Adrian's gaze narrowed. Eric raised a brow. I slid another document across the polished wood-printed emails, time-stamped, addressed to the executive team warnings I had sent days earlier. Unanswered, silence held, then, slowly. The eyes around the table shifted, not toward me, but toward Victor. His face flushed, his mouth half open, but no one rose to defend him. Adrian tapped the folder gently with one hand, his tone cool and deliberate. It seems the company has been blind to the very expertise it needed most. The words settled like a gavel, and I felt the balance of power tip. For the first time, it wasn't me on trial. It was him. The boardroom doors closed after a brief recess, and when they reopened, the air carried the finality of a verdict. Adrian Volmark's voice was steady, decisive. The European expansion will proceed on the accelerated timeline. It will be led by Marcella Orvain, promoted to Director of International Partnerships, effective immediately. A murmur rippled across the room, but my heartbeat stayed even. I had waited too long for merit to mean something. Now it finally did. Adrian continued without pause. Selena Draven will transition to facilities management in our Belgrade office. Her organizational skills will be of use there. Celine stiffened as though struck. Belgrade. Her voice cracked, disbelief stripping away her polish. She turned to me, eyes flashing. You set me up. I met her glare, my words calm but unyielding. I stopped protecting you from yourself. Her jaw tightened, but no retort came. She looked smaller suddenly, her certainty collapsing in the silence. Victor's voice boomed from the corner. This is outrageous. She's my daughter. Adrian didn't even raise his tone. And you, Victor, will take an extended sabbatical. The board's confidence has eroded. This is not negotiable. The color drained from Victor's face. The room that had once bent to his command no longer belonged to him. His reign ended not with applause, but with a quiet decision from men and women who had grown tired of cleaning up his mistakes. I sat still, letting the weight of the moment settle. Years of humiliation, stolen credit, and overlooked contributions condensed into this single shift of power. Celine exiled, Victor dismantled. When the meeting adjourned, Celine stormed out, her heels striking the marble like gunfire. Victor followed, shoulders hunched, his phone pressed to his ear in desperation. I remained seated, the folder of my notes still before me, the future suddenly, startlingly mine to shape. And as the last voices faded from the boardroom, I realized that with my enemies falling away, the question now was not about survival, but about what I would build with the power I had finally reclaimed. The days that followed blurred into one another, a relentless march of 12-hour shifts. I worked side by side with Isolde, our desks buried in filings, translations, and regulatory submissions. We spoke little, the silence filled with determination rather than exhaustion. Every signature, every stamped document felt like a brick laid into the foundation of something permanent. Eric Langenfeld visited twice, his sharp gaze softening each time he studied our progress. At the end of one particularly grueling evening, he paused at my desk, tapping the corner of a binder. You achieved in days what others failed to deliver in months, he said. His voice carried no flattery, only recognition. For the first time in years, I felt seen. 2 weeks later, confirmation arrived. The European Parliament recorded its vote, and our company's filings had been accepted just in time. The partnership was formalized, the expansion secured, the numbers already promising $40 million in first-year revenue. The very project Celine had tried to claim as hers now bore my name openly, stamped on every document that mattered. That night, as I closed my laptop, my phone buzzed. A message from an unfamiliar international number lit the screen. "It's freezing. Congratulations. I underestimated you. Celine." I read it once, then set the phone aside without reply. In the quiet of my apartment, I understood what power truly was. Not the shouting in boardrooms, not the arrogance of last names or borrowed authority. Power was building so high, so solid, that even those who tried to erase you were forced to acknowledge what remained. The next morning, I opened the company website. There it was under executive leadership, my name etched cleanly, permanently Marcella Orvain, Director of International Partnerships. From exile, Celine could only watch. The purest revenge was never loud. It was undeniable success, and sometimes silence was the sharpest reply of all.